World, wake up!
World, wake up!
More sanctions on Russia!
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 Seize Russian assets!
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 We can't keep trying to be the good guys and the benevolent ones with individuals who always cheat, who always play unfair, who always commit the lowest crimes that humanity has known throughout all of its history. We need to finally start taking this situation seriously. We need to finally take initiative in this confrontation between the free world and the enslaved world, between Russia and the West. Because Russia is not alone. Russia is getting help from other pariah states just like they are, like North Korea and Iran. Those are their main allies right now, but they are not the only ones. There are other countries, more powerful countries, more dangerous countries that are more indirectly helping the Russians continue their genocide, continue their terroristic acts against the Ukrainian people and many other peoples around the world. We will not name all of these countries because they're not cooperating as directly. But we all know, we all see it very clearly, that when somebody continues to push for the same things that the Russian terrorist regime wants, we see it very clearly who their allegiance truly is pledged to. It's obvious, really. Some of the most obvious cases, of course, are Orban and Fico. But there are others, more devious individuals, who hide their true purpose better, who are able to insert themselves into European politics, into Western politics, and to continue to subvert it from within. I would highly encourage every person who can hear us right now and in the future on the other side of the screen to look up Yuriy Bezmenov, the ex-KGB agent who explains point by point how subversion functions. And he explains that those tactics, those doctrines have not died with the Soviet Union. They continue to exist, and in fact, they're alive and well. The Russian terrorist regime is putting those tactics into practice as we speak. Their propaganda machine is in full throttle. And they will continue to try to poison people's minds with their lies in the future, no matter what. That is why, my friends, it's so important that we continue to speak, that we continue to inform the world of what really is going on in Ukraine and how we can all do our part to finally end this war once and for all. Not for a month, not for a year, but forever. There was hope in the past that in 2014, if some territories are given away to Russia, then Russia would simply give up. Russia would be content with what they have. But alas, the mentality of the thug, of the crook, of the bully has slipped under the radar of many people. And they did not understand what they were truly dealing with. They did not understand that the Russians are shameless, that when they get what they want, they will demand double next time. And if they don't, well, then they will complain forever until they do. There can be no negotiations with Russia. No more treaties, no more concessions. There can only be responsibility for the terrorist Russian regime, a change of government, the return of all of the lands they've taken away, compensations and reparations for all the damage they have done in the past, the seizing of their assets, a reform of their government. Those are the bare minimum that we will accept to negotiate with the Russian terrorist regime in the future. There have been many nations reminiscent of Russia right now. Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan come to mind. Absolutely genocidal regimes. that should and are being condemned as we speak, and will be condemned in the future, throughout history. However, after their defeat, they have changed their ways. They were forced to change, and they have changed. Now, they are pinnacles of quality of life and the values of freedom, of law and equality. They have changed. And the Russians also must change in the future. But they will never change until that change finally comes to them. And they need to be beaten in Ukraine to finally change in that regard. Or else, they will simply continue doing what they've been doing up until this moment. And Ukraine will not be the end. Ukraine is only the beginning, my friends. If the Russian terrorist regime gets away with what they're doing right now, they will go for Moldova. It's certainty. They will annex Belarus. Officially, that is. Because Belarus is as good as a region of Russia at this very moment. The people of Belarus have always shown their desire for freedom. But they are being oppressed by the Russian terrorist regime as we speak. They have done impressive rallies, peaceful protests against the Russian puppet regime in their country. However, the Russians did what the Russians always do. They've invaded them with tanks and put down those peaceful protests. Reminiscent scene to Tiananmen Square. Perhaps less bloody, of course, but reminiscent still. And we must not forget that if NATO shows inability to deal with the terrorist Russian regime, then NATO will also not be beyond the reach of the Russians. The Suwalki Gap is the likeliest option for the Russians to link Kaliningrad, or originally Königsberg, to the Belarus. And we must know about this, my friends. The Russians are considering plans of the annexation of the Suwalki Gap as we speak. Many of their plans, many of their ideas for this invasion have already become viral. They have already been leaked into the public. And the people who oppose this idea, who say that this never happened, are simply being willfully ignorant. Because this is easily available information to everybody. And that is the real problem, my friends. The Russians have become depoliticized. The Russians have lost their power over their so-called democracy, which does not resemble democracy in any way whatsoever anymore. But we must not lose that power. We must not lose that ability to speak and to be able to influence politics from within. Because if we do, we will become the same as Russia, depoliticized, unable to stop whoever is in charge from doing atrocities. That is what's happening in Russia right now. And that is the freedom they want to take away from everybody else in the world. They are an expansionistic regime, and they will not stop until they are stopped. For any people who might doubt this, let's remind ourselves of the old Russian saying that Russia has no borders. And that, my friends, means that the Russian borders will continue to expand until either Russia is stopped or until it takes over the world. That is the way they see the rest of the world. Not as equals, not as allies, but as future victims. The question is not if, the question is when. And we must make the answer to that question never. Russia is a terrorist state.
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 Fighter jets for Ukraine.
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 Air defense for Ukraine!
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 And now, my friends, we will have a short musical break.